Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Charvak podcast. This is your host, Kushal Mehra. My guest today is Yasmine Mohammed. Yasmine is a Canadian human rights activist. She is the founder of Free Hearts, Free Minds, an organization that provides psychological support for free thinkers living within Muslim majority countries where there's state sanctioned punishment for leaving Islam. She's also working with the Ayan Hirsi Ali Foundation as an advisor and as a member of the Center for Inquiry Speakers Bureau. She's also written a wonderful book, which I've read, and I would recommend all of you read too. It's called Unveiled. So without further ado, Yasmine, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Kushal.
So Yasmine, before we get into the meat of the subject, so I want to continue what we were just talking about offline, that I did not know your book did not find a publisher, because I just went on Kindle, clicked on Unveil, bought it, and you know how it goes. You don't look at whether there's a publisher or not. But to my shock, I actually saw you tweet a while ago, and then you had retweeted it or quote tweeted it saying, I didn't find a publisher a few weeks or a month or so ago. And I was like, damn, she didn't find a publisher. So what happened there?
Yeah, so I think that people are scared to touch this topic. The literary agent that I had was in the UK. So the most common response that she was getting was that people were, they had the memory of Salman Rushdie was too fresh in their minds. So they were too scared to publish any books that were in any way criticizing the religion of Islam. So although I had the support of Sam Harris, and he encouraged me to self-publish, and so I did. And luckily, it's being translated now into Finnish and French and Spanish and Portuguese. And, I have a publisher in India now, Garuda Books. So it will be, published in India soon. So there, it's successful. I'm grateful that so many people want to read my book and so many people have positive things to say about it. But unfortunately, the literary world, the publishing world are very timid, and they don't want to publish anything that could be considered in any way controversial, which is really weird to say because we're talking about books. That's what books are all about, critical thinking and pushing people outside of their box. But that's what the literary world has become these days, and it's quite unfortunate. I mean, even you talked about buying my book off of Amazon. Even Amazon would not allow me to advertise my book on their site because they said, we don't allow books. And they literally said to me, the quote was, we don't allow books that are too controversial to be advertised. And you read the book. It's basically my life. Like I'm telling you my experience, and you're going to tell me that my experience is too controversial. I'm not giving you my opinion. I'm not giving you like some intellectual diatribe. Like I'm telling you, this is my life. And the response is, oh no, your life is too controversial. It's not politically correct.
Yeah, just to put it on record, I've read your book, and what the hell was so controversial about it? I mean, I don't get it. I've literally read it, and if that is controversial, I don't get it. So let us look at it this way. Now, if there was, let's say, not Yasmine Mohammed, some Judy, or let's say whatever, and she would have written this story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just the only thing that changes is the religion and the skin color of the person, right? There would be no controversy.
Oh my God.
Suddenly, if you just change the name and the religion, the rest of the story stays the same.
Exactly. I mean, I could tell you specific stories about specific women who have written books exactly like mine, just a memoir of their life, and the way that they are celebrated by their media, by their, one woman was approached by Hollywood to buy the rights of her book to make a movie out of it before her book was even published. So they didn't even know if her book was going to be successful or not. But they're just so excited to see women from America or women leaving Christianity to speak out. They love to support them. But a woman leaving fundamentalism of another flavor, not Christianity, those women are ignored. So that includes me and women that are leaving the Hasidic Jewish community as well. They're not quite as maligned as women who leave Islam, but they're certainly not getting celebrated in the same way women who leave Christianity are, which is really unfair. Because if we're going to talk about, celebrating womanhood, celebrating strength and bravery and diversity, they love to talk about diversity all the time, inclusion all the time. But now all of a sudden we are diverse, we want to be included, and they're like, no, you're too controversial.
Yeah, it's like, diversity is good, but some diversity is bad.
Yeah.
And we don't know how to figure it out. Like, I never realized this myself until we would have this experience in India. I'm being very honest. I think the West is only catching up to it in a very weird way, because in India, anybody who follows Indian politics in a serious manner would, like, if you ask this to an Indian, they'd be like, oh yeah, you just know what we feel now. And they'd be like, how? I was like, well, we have separate civil laws in our country. Which country has separate civil laws? India does, where their Muslim people have different civil laws, Hindus have different civil laws, Christians have different civil laws. So until recently, triple talaq was legal in India. You could just say talaq, talaq, talaq if you're marrying you want to divorce a Muslim woman, and that's over. And even today in India, people don't realize nikah halala is still legal. Yeah, it is. It's disgusting. And if you go around, everybody keeps talking about, India is a democracy. I was like, democracies don't allow that. I thought democracies valued human rights, but it's so. Let us now, because I don't want to make it all about your book, because I want to make it more about the current controversy after the events in France and Austria too. But I can't I can't have you on the podcast and not talk about the book, especially the part of your life in the beginning where, to be very honest, when I read it, I was literally shocked. First of all, I not say this to you on offline, but I want to say this to you online, that I actually admire your courage. You people like you actually give me hope. And I mean this with all seriousness. When I read what happened to you, what you've been through, and first of all, I don't know how you were able to narrate it in the entire book itself, because to put these kinds of experiences in words, because when I was reading it, and I was just, my brain would tell me that she's writing all of this. And not only she went through this and she's writing about it. So, what was the experience like, just to pin it down, the whole book, the whole experience?
The experience of writing the book, was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. And to be honest, after I finished writing it and everything that it put me through, I felt like it wasn't worth it. Like, I felt like there's nothing, especially since I had so much trouble publishing it afterwards too. I felt like I just almost killed myself. If it wasn't for my husband, honestly, I wouldn't have survived writing that book. To be perfectly honest, it put me in a very dark place. Things that I had never thought about or acknowledged even for so long, that had just been buried away in my subconscious. All of a sudden I was digging in and pulling them out on purpose, So it knocked me off my feet. I was agoraphobic. I was suicidal. I was having panic attacks constantly. It was really bad. And, and then after it was all over, I felt like at least if I do all of this, at least if something good comes out of it, something positive comes out of this, then it will be worth it. But there was that time there where I couldn't even get it published. And I felt like I went through all of this for nothing. It's not going to even be able to get out in the world. It's not going to even be able to help anybody. It's not going to even serve. There was no purpose for me doing all this. And so I was, I was already in a dark place anyway, so it was easy to just get darker. But again, Sam Harris really encouraged me to self-publish, and he really supported me so much in getting that done, because I really didn't want to do it. And I was really just doing it. Him and my husband were both like pushing. And I was like, whatever. And I let them do the work, because I had no more energy, and I was just so tired, and I hated everything. But they got the book out, and I could not be more grateful at the response. I'm really, really grateful that people are reading it, that they're understanding the message that I'm trying to convey, that they are taking that message and that they're passing it along. So many people turn, I've had people tell me, oh, your hateful Islamic book, or your book that hates Islam, or whatever, your Islamophobic book. And it's like, have you even read it? Like they don't even read it, but they just judge me right away. They judge the book right away. They make these assumptions. And I was, I'm really heartened. I'm really grateful to see that a lot of people are being very, very supportive. And the people that are being hateful are luckily not able to overpower all of the positive energy that this book has created. So I'm happy.
Yeah, so one interesting aspect of your book that stood out to me was, in the beginning you talk about the whole, and honestly, I don't get it. Like, I'm a disbeliever myself, but I always say this whenever I talk to disbelievers from Muslim backgrounds, because our worldview is so different, and our experience and our just our reaction to the entire disbelieving process is so different. Prayer, and this is because I read this in your book too, and my Muslim friends in India have told me too, who are closeted disbelievers. They're not open about it. I mean, it's India, so most of them don't come out in the open, and they share these stories with me. They're like, prayer is trauma for them. Now, can you explain this idea? Because, to be very honest, I might be a disbeliever. Hindu prayers are not trauma for me. I'd still sit with my mom, and I do the Diwali, because we're just about to celebrate Diwali in India. I'll sit with my mom and dad, and we do the Diwali puja. But what's with Islam? What is this unique thing that? And you're not the only one, because I've heard this so many times from my friends that, oh my God, prayer is so much trauma. Can you explain that?
Yeah, even the word prayer is not the right word. Like it's worship, really, I think, is what it is. It's submission. So I've been to churches and I've been to temples. It's a completely different vibe. It's a completely different energy. Prayer has like a quality of being almost comforting. It's not like that with the Islamic prayer. The Islamic prayer is duty. You must do this 5 times a day. The first prayer is before the sun rises, and the last prayer is after the sun sets. So your entire day is consumed around these 5 prayers that must be done on time. And when you're doing the prayer, you're not like having a quiet meditative opportunity to communicate with God or something like that. No, it's very prescribed. You have to say these very specific things, and there's a certain surah that has to be said in every single rak'ah. That means you have to say it like 4 times every prayer sometimes. And it's all about the people who God has cursed and the people who God hates, and you need to hate them too. So it's really just like cursing the Jews and the Christians and the polytheists. And so it's a negative energy that is prescribed. You must say this every ayah, like multiple times per prayer. So there's nothing meditative and relaxing about it. It's It's just like pledging your allegiance 5 times a day. Yes, I will do what you tell me to do, like kind of thing. And you're not thinking, you're not involved as an individual human being. You're involved as a soldier getting in line, you know, and doing as you're told. In fact, thinking about it is dangerous, is against the rules. Like you will be, if you use your mind, it's like, it's a negative thing. You're being told, oh no, that's the devil whispering in your ear. You know, you have to just follow Sirat al-Mustaqim. Just follow the long, straight path. Just do what you're told without thinking. So prayer is like that. It's just submission. Like think of it almost like physically, think of like being whipped and you're all slaves. I mean, Muslims are called, you slaves of Allah. That's how you are. That's what you call yourself, right? That's what the name Abdullah means. And so you are just kind of, for 5 times a day, you have to pledge your allegiance and submit to Allah. And to be honest, it's not only inconvenient to have to do this 5 times a day, it's tiring, it's exhausting. When you're a child, that you know you have to be up before the sun rises and you have to stay up until the sun sets. I mean, I used to have to get up every single morning before the sun rises, pray, and then there's like a couple of hours, you know, before school. So you can't go back to bed. So we'd have to sit there and we'd just read Quran, like memorize more from this book. Like my entire childhood was just sleep deprivation, you know? And then because, you know, you lived in Canada, how long our days are in the summers, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And think of that. Sometimes Ramadan was during that time. You can't eat from sunrise to sunset. Imagine a 7-year-old kid not eating for like 10 to 12 hours a day. It's fucking traumatizing. But you have to do this and you can't complain, because if you complain, then that makes you a bad person. And so you're going to be judged by your family and yourself. You're going to have like this sense of like self-hate that you cannot get in line like everybody else, you know, like there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, but see, this is the thing. And another aspect, I mean, I never get this whole concept of hell. Like there is hellfire. Oh, if you don't do this, you're going to hell and your skin is going to burn and it's going to be like this. And it's going to be like, why would you put a little child through this? I mean, I'm just thinking about it. For me, growing up, religion was what? I have an exam. I'll go to God and say, when I was a believer, I'll be like, hey, man. I mean, or, you know, for us, man, woman, it doesn't matter. Everything is God, right? So it'd be like, come on, help me out here. Maybe I've not studied well enough in the exam, and that's how it is. You know, God is always like an outsourcing agent for most people that I've seen in my life. We outsource our problems. It's like we've outsourced it to, at least for Hindu kids, I've seen that. It's like an outsourcing agent, the anchor that we outsource our problems to. But with Muslims, it's like, oh my God, if I don't do this, my skin is going to get burnt and whatnot. What the hell? So is this like some kind of mental trauma?
Oh my God. Yes, it is. It's an abusive relationship. Yes, you are taught from a young age to fear Allah. So I was always really surprised because, you know, in Canada, the most dominant religion is Christianity, that they're all about like loving God and God loves you. And I'm like, it's so opposite growing up as a Muslim kid. It's very fear-based. So you fear Allah. You do things because you're so scared that he's going to punish you in the grave. He's going to punish you on the day of judgment. He's going to punish you in hell. Like it's just this constant fear. And when you're controlled by this fear at a very young age, even as an adult, even when I started to not believe in Islam anymore, I was so scared still. I was so consumed with this fear because it had been put in me at such a young age. And then that fear is also here in this world too, right? So we're not just scared that Allah is going to punish us in the hereafter after we're dead, but it's like your family will punish you today too, because in Islam, if a child does not pray or read the Quran, then they should be hit. And you see that translated in all sorts of vicious ways. But it's like the way that you're supposed to raise your children. In the same way that the Quran tells men, if you fear that your wife is arrogant or disobedient, then beat her. So it's the same kind of thing. That's what you're instructed, how to control your wife and how to control your children is through beating them. So it's constant like fear, submission, like it's not from a place of love at all. It's from a place of fear. And it really does keep people in line. You know, that's why there are so many Muslims today, is because they fear being executed. That's my entire organization, Free Hearts, Free Minds, is it supports people who have left Islam but are living in Muslim majority countries. You know, we have some clients from India as well, even though it's not Muslim majority. It's Muslim enough that there are people living in fear there. And, you know, in some countries, they could actually be executed by the government, by law enforcement. But in other countries, they are being killed by their families, you know, in honor violence and in honor killings. And sometimes not even for leaving Islam. Sometimes it's just because you took off your hijab, or sometimes because you have a Western boyfriend or girlfriend. So they'll have, you know, this fear-based control is in the dunya, like here in this world, constantly by your family, your society, your community, and also when you die as well in the grave and on the day of judgment, and for the rest of eternity, you'll be burning.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a story. Obviously, I'm not going to take the name of the gentleman whose story it is, but I remember over a cup of coffee, and this guy is actually from a liberal Muslim family in India. But even he told me the story.
You say liberal Muslim, yeah. You have to do this.
Yeah. So we were just having coffee, and I was like, man, I don't get it. This is, I think, a year and a half ago or something, where, you know, the podcast was just slowly getting recognized, and I was like, you know, man, I get these messages from Muslims now, and they're like, please don't take my name. And, you know, I'm like you, I'm a disbeliever. And I would rarely get these messages from Hindus. And I asked him, I was like, what's with this? And he's like, well, I'll give you a story. And he used to wear earrings, right? So he went to the mosque to pray. This guy is a believer, by the way. And he's like, so I would go and pray. And one day, a group of men from the mosque come to my doorstep and say, you're not allowed to wear earrings because the shaitan comes and sits inside your ear and says something to you. First of all, what a load of rubbish.
So what, the earring is going to make it an uncomfortable seat for him?
I was like, first of all, what the hell, earrings? And then I was like, then how did your father react? He's like, my father told them to buzz off, but he comes from a family that can take the pressure because they're politically connected. You know how it is in our countries. If you're not politically connected, you cannot get away with many things. But what the hell? I mean, earrings, and I'll give you my experience. So 17 or 18, I clearly remember telling Mom, I don't believe in these things. Like, I don't believe Ram was an actual god. He could be a historical figure. I don't know, but not an actual divine deity. And my mom just looked at me, okay, just shut up and eat your breakfast. I don't care. And it ended there. And then, you know, I've spoken to so many ex-Muslims now. Like, I spoke to Waleed. Waleed's a very good friend. This is Haris, and there's so many others. And, you know, once I was telling Waleed, I was like, you guys have some sexy stories, man. I don't have anything. I was like, my story is so boring. Mom just said, shut up, go eat your breakfast. But now, in hindsight, when I listen to all this, I was like, I'm so lucky. I'm not born there. Sheer luck. I was born in a Hindu house. It's pure luck. And before somebody says, I do not say Hinduism is perfect. If anybody knows me, I go after Hinduism as much as I can. But the point is that this is unique. There's something unique when it comes to Islam. This overarching narrative of every aspect of your life has to be controlled. The way you pray, the way you eat, what you wear. So with what you wear, now you've been, and I have to say that that video of yours, I think it was a year or two ago, about the burqa, I think, or the niqab, where you took it out and you burnt it. I think it was in a dustbin somewhere. You burnt it. I think that was such a powerful message. So kudos to you for doing that. But can you tell me what it is to? I don't know. I just call it a female Darth Vader costume. So please, that's all it is to me. But what is the entire experience like? Like I'm a textile fabric manufacturer, so I can tell you what the burqa is made of, but I don't know what it is to wear it. But what the hell? So what is this experience of the burqa and the niqab?
Yeah, it is definitely a tool of control. So it is, the way I describe it is it's like a personal, it's like a private or a portable, it's a portable sensory deprivation chamber. So when you wear this, it inhibits all of your senses. So you cannot see properly, you cannot hear properly, you cannot speak properly, everything is inhibited. And you are essentially no longer human. You're no longer interacting with the humans around you. So I also describe it as being a ghost, because you can see everybody, but they can't see you. And so you're just kind of, you feel so dehumanized because you're so separated from the rest of the world. It's definitely a dehumanizing tool. And it is forced on women because women are considered aura, which is like nakedness or a private part. So every part of the woman is considered a private part, even her voice. So women should neither be seen nor heard. We are to be covered up in a death shroud as if we are dead, but we're still breathing under there. Covered up in this death shroud and shut our mouth too. So literally we're treated as if we're dead. That's the only way that they will be okay with us in society, is if we are akin to the dead. And so, you know, I actually saw this picture making the rounds on social media where it was like this advertisement. You know, quite often there's these Islamic advertisements that are giving nasiha or giving like advice to the Muslim ummah. And it has a woman lying on a bed like she's dead and she's covered in a death shroud. And it says, you know, you either wear it when you're alive or you're going to wear it when you're dead. So basically it's making women fear death and say, oh, if you don't wear this while you're alive, it's going to be forced on you when you're dead anyway. And so you might as well make Allah happy and do it when you're living. So they know, they know that they are treating us as if we are dead. You know, we can't even speak as if we're alive. So it's actually the most horrific thing that you can do to a human being. I really felt like my soul was rotting under that thing. And I was a shadow of myself. In some ways, I look back to who I became at that time, and I wonder, you know, how did I survive it? You know, how did I come back to being who I am? And I quite often think of because I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, and when J.K. Rowling was writing about the Dementors, when she was creating the Dementors, which are these creatures that are all black, and how they're nothing but sadness, and they suck your soul, and it's darkness. That's, to me, really is the best descriptor. Obviously, she wasn't thinking of the niqab, but to me, that's the most, that's the popular culture descriptor that I can give somebody who doesn't know what it's like to be forced into that niqab.
Here's the thing. Something that has always bothered me, again, like I said, I'm a fabric manufacturer, so I mean, I'm totally opposed to the burqa, but even when you're making something, man, what a bad choice. The worst color possible, black, attracts almost all the heat that is possible on planet Earth. And then not even cotton, polyester. That's like, you must be really hating women to put them in a black polyester costume. That's all it is. It's a costume. That's all I call it.
It's misogyny. It is hate of women. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So this question, so that very moment for the first time when you realize that, damn, I don't have to wear this anymore. So what was that moment? Can you narrate that for me? That moment when you knew, oh, I don't have to do this anymore.
I quite often get asked this question, and I'm sorry to disappoint that it wasn't a moment. Like, I can't describe it as like this elation of like this freedom. It was so slow, and it was so seeped in fear. Like, taking off the niqab was a step-by-step process too, right? First, I took off my gloves. So I went out with just my hands showing, and then it was like, I had a friend who, she wore hijab, but she was like encouraging me to show my face. She's like encouraging me to take off the niqab. And I was scared to do that. I was nervous to do that. In Islam, they teach you, like, the more you cover, the better of a person you are. The less you cover, the worse of a person you are. And so I felt like I was going backwards as a person, as my morality or my humanity or my identity. Like, it's very personal. It's not just a piece of cloth. It really feels like you are, like you're going backwards as a person. You are devolving. And that's actually the words that they use. They say, like, oh, animals don't cover themselves. Animals are naked. And so every time you take off clothes, you're becoming closer and closer to animals. And the more and more you cover yourself, the more enlightened you are. This is only for women, by the way. Men, apparently. Yeah, men don't get to be enlightened. Men always get to show their face and hands and whatever.
Yasmine, you should remember, Islam is the first feminist religion.
Oh, fuck. Yeah. Oh, there's certain statements that just got said and they just permeate in society. And it's like, nobody stops to think about how incredibly Orwellian it is that you keep repeating this trope. Like, Islam is a religion of peace. Really? Really? You're going to say that? Like, do you never pay attention? Did you see the 50 people that were just killed in Mozambique? They weren't just killed. They were beheaded and cut up in pieces in a football field. Did you not read about that? Did you not read about the 35 students in Afghanistan, university students that were just gunned down? Maybe you heard about the teacher in France that just got his head removed, or the woman that was praying in a church in France that was also beheaded. Like, you didn't hear about 9/11. You didn't hear about Charlie Hebdo. You didn't hear about the Pulse nightclub shootings. You know what I mean? Like, of course I could go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. They know this. They know the global terrorism that Islam is inspiring. And before every single one of those deaths, what do they say? Allahu Akbar. And you're going to tell me that Islam is a religion of peace? Like, when you say Islam is a religion of peace, that's on you. You know what I mean? Like, you now look like the idiot. The people that say that are basically announcing to the world, I am a complete moron and I cannot tell the difference between a religion that encourages its adherents to be peaceful versus a religion that encourages its adherents to commit terrorism. You know, it's not even on the Muslims that are indoctrinated with this, and they actually believe these things because they were told these things from childhood, and they are too scared to think otherwise because they're brainwashed. It's on the liberal, open-minded people who come from free societies that are going to repeat this trope as if they are functionally, you know, mentally, their mental facilities are, you know, I'm trying to not swear right now. I'm trying to find like a polite way of saying, you know, they're fucking deranged. Like, is there something wrong with your brain that you're going to repeat Islam is a religion of peace, or Islam is the most feminist religion? How do you say that? Look at the Islamic countries and look at how women are treated there. Consider even the most basic rights of women. These are things that are not, they're unheard of in the Western world. A woman in Iran was arrested because she was riding a bike without a hijab on. She got arrested. Those are two crimes. Riding a bike is a crime in Iran, and not wearing hijab is a crime in Iran. People don't even think of those as freedoms. That's just normal life everywhere in the world. Okay. In Afghanistan, women just won this huge push, this huge campaign for their names to be on their birth certificates, because they were always considered daughter of and then mother of. They never got to be an individual. In Egypt, where my family is from, it's rude to say your mother's name. It's like, it's aura. It's like this shameful thing to say a woman's name. Even her name is shameful. And they come and tell me this is the most feminist religion. There's nothing more misogynist that you could possibly imagine than that tool of victim blaming, that tool of slut shaming, that tool of misogyny, that tool of rape culture called hijab. And you're going to tell me Islam is the most feminist religion? Like, it defies all logic. And that's why the subtitle of my book is How Western Liberals Empower Radical Islam. Now, I know that the same thing happens in India as well. So it's just, you know, how the left in general, how they empower radical Islam by pretending that they're stupid. You know, you can recognize it. You can recognize it when it's coming from a Christian context or a Hindu context. You understand it. Oh, that's misogyny. When it comes from a Muslim context, the exact same thing is feminism.
Yeah, it's actually very annoying, and believe it or not, when I was living there, I don't think so. I think the average Westerner just did not have any idea about Islam, to be very honest. Everything changed. I don't know. Interestingly, when I used to live in Canada, 9/11 had just happened then, and I was there, and I saw the Western world change. So there was a change which I don't like. So it's very interesting, and I don't know what it is with the left. You know, I'm a pretty liberal guy. I think I'm socially liberal on all counts, and I'm a fierce critic of the lack of freedom of expression in India, and I don't get it. I mean, do these Westerners have a death wish, Yasmine?
That's the ultimate question. Yeah.
What are they doing? I mean, so I'll give you an example recently, right? So the beheading happens in France, and good on Macron, right? He stood up and he said, you know what? F you. I'm going to push back. This is not our way of life. Our way of life is about freedom and, you know, free speech and all that good stuff. And then you have Mr. Peoplekind. That's all I call it, Mr. Peoplekind. Not even mankind, it's peoplekind now. I don't know what the hell is. And what's with him and Indian dances? Can you tell him to stop doing Bhangra?
Because
it's irritating.
Because he is a bigot. The way his Bhangra dancing is no different than his blackface. It's because he considers all others to be like this fetish for him, because as a drama teacher, to just dress up in like somebody from a different culture or from a different ethnicity. He thinks of them as like little toys. It's bigotry. It's the elitist, liberal, fancy, nouveau racist is what it is. I mean, it's pathetic. Any kind of, celebration that's going on, when he goes to like Chinese New Year, he dresses up like he's from China. And he goes and he pats the Chinese people on their head and he's like, Gung Hei Fat Choi, and he acts like he's embarrassing. He does like the old school Orientalism, the noble native, the noble savage. That's where he is. That he's still in that kind of mindset. And people kind. He judges people. He tells people not to be racist when he's the biggest racist possible. And he was so embarrassing with his response to this France issue. So embarrassing. Him and the leader of Turkey and the leader of Pakistan were the only 3 world leaders who didn't stand in support of France. Like, how embarrassing that your country is standing there with Pakistan and Turkey.
Yeah, but I don't get it. What went wrong with Canada and Canadian politics? It's like most people don't understand Canadian politics. It's not like the Conservative Party in Canada. And actually, another thing that people don't realize is that the Conservatives in Canada are not actually like the Conservatives in America. The Conservative Party, not even close. They're not like the Conservatives in America. Conservative Party in Canada, most people don't realize, is the most pro-immigration party that you can have. Like Harper was always pro-immigration, and if we looked at voting patterns and stuff, like a lot of immigrants, like new immigrants, they vote Conservative. And it's what the hell has gone wrong in the body politic of Canada that you have, and I don't know how to say, because like I'm socially liberal. I can't vote for the left. I just can't. I can't look at that man dancing hideously and doing all the things he does and then saying that freedom of speech has limits. Since when did free speech have limits? And if free speech has limits, why is it only with Islam? Then why not with Jesus, or why not with Ram, or Lakshman, or let's say Yahweh, the Jewish God? What happens to the free speech has limits there? Or is this a classic case where we are giving in basically to the heckler's veto, where there is a set of people who's going to come and use violence as a tool of negotiation? So is Justin Trudeau basically telling other communities that if you want me to take you seriously, become violent?
I mean, that's a very logical conclusion. Yeah, that seems to be, basically, yeah, he's like, I'm capitulating to the bullies. So if you want me to pander to you, then you've got to make me, submit via fear. But I spoke in the House of Commons in Ottawa against M103, which was the Islamophobia bill. And it was exactly that. It was a bill that they want to try and make it illegal to criticize Islam, which is exactly the opposite of free expression and free speech and one of the cornerstones of Western civilization. It's pretty shocking that bill would even try to get passed. But what's even more shocking is that it was unanimously passed by the Liberal Party. Unanimous. So you can't even say that Justin Trudeau is a complete moron all by himself, because he has an army of morons behind him. And you're right that Canada has changed, because if you look back to even, his father, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, never spoke like this. He was a huge supporter of free expression and, freedom of thought and freedom of of religion and from religion, and he was all about freedom, and he understood how important that was as a part of being Canadian and as part of Canada. But Trudeau, I think, in many ways, is an empty head and an empty suit, and he's just a politician, and he'll just do whatever his constituents want him to do, and he'll say whatever his constituents want him to say. So he's a symptom of the problem that we have in Canada, which is, as you described, we have all left-wing parties. And even our conservative government is more to the left of even Bernie Sanders. So when we talk about our conservative party, it's in no way comparison to the American Conservative Party. But the problem with going so left like that is the horseshoe theory. When you go so far left, you're going to find yourself in this authoritarian place, which is not too different from the far right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where things have gone, unfortunately, in Canada.
Yeah, and that's what worries me the most, that someone who's a lover of, liberty, I always thought that it doesn't matter if you're left of center or right of center. At the end of the day, if you're in this camp, whether left of center, I mean, what would our disagreement be on? Right? How much capitalism is good? How much of public schooling is good? How much of public healthcare is good? That's the debate on. I can live with that. But if the debate shifts from that to whether I can criticize a religious idea, is when I get scared, because people don't realize it. I live in a country where that is a reality. Every single time I host discussions like this, like I sometimes I have to tell my guests before I go online, it's like there are certain areas that you don't cross because you're living in the West. I live in India. We have an active blasphemy law. We do. And they can charge me anytime they want. And this is what worries me. I mean, what's so special about this that you always give in to bad ideas for what? For a few votes? Then where is the counter to that? My worry is that if this is such a bad idea, there has to be a counter vote. Do you see a counter vote coming up in a country like Canada?
Not currently. Not at all. It's quite scary because, I just don't know what direction things are going to go right now. I don't know what it's going to take. So in France, you mentioned Macron has changed his tune, and he's now, he's shutting down Islamist mosques. He's deporting people with backgrounds in terrorism. He's deploying thousands more soldiers at his borders. He's reacting responsibly. But how much blood had to flow before he did that? Like, they turned a blind eye in France for a very long time to many, many, many murders of innocent people because of Islamic terrorism. And it took them a very long time before they finally said, okay, I guess we'll address this issue. And so is that the only route out of this? Is that the only way? We're going to continue to capitulate until we find ourselves swimming in pools of the blood of innocent people, and then we say, oh, okay, now it's finally time to fight back. I really hope that that's not the way it's going to go, but so far, that's the way it's been going.
Yeah, that's what worries me. So I guess this answers a couple of questions people had asked, because I was just looking at the folks in the live chat. So they did ask, Yasmine, in the light of what's going on in France regarding Islam, how high is the possibility of such accidents occurring in Canada? I don't know. I mean, if you ask me, pretty high. One thing, Yasmine, my observation is when you look at the pantheon of activism inside the Muslim community, so there's actually a lot of activists in Canada. Obviously, you're there. Then you have Rahil Raza. Then you have Irshad Manji. There's Tariq Fatah. There's Ali Amjad Rizvi. There's Armin too. I know Armin has been getting a lot of shit from the Hindus these days, but whatever. I mean, I disagree with many things Armin does, but at the end of the day, Armin has been also working against a lot of these things, and there are many other Canadian activists too. In fact, the irony is most of the activists, when it comes to Islam and Islamism, are actually Canadian. I hardly see any other than Ayan, I think, in America, and that too, Ayan had to move to America because she was no longer safe in Europe. So what's so special about Canada, Yasmine? All of you guys seem to be coming up. The activism in Canada is quite alive, and all of y'all are obviously not even in sync when it comes to social or political ideology. You seem to be all over the place, but it's thriving. So in that sense, isn't it good that Canada does have a space for that kind of activism too?
It does have that kind of space, and that's exactly why M103 was really scary, was because they were threatening to take that space away from us. They're threatening to make us being able to speak out against this ideology. They wanted to make that illegal. And Ali and I were two people that spoke in the House of Commons against that. And I know that Rahil Raza and Tariq Fatah have also spoken in the past against Islamism. It has infiltrated our government in many ways, not just our liberal government, but our conservative government as well. We have Islamists all over our political parties. And I think that, like you said at the beginning of this conversation, most Canadians are not paying attention or they're not aware. But people like us who are coming from those societies, everybody that you mentioned, except for me, wasn't born in Canada, right? They were all born in Muslim majority countries. And so they can recognize right away that there is a dangerous trajectory happening here. We're on a dangerous trajectory. And the unfortunate thing is that we are considered the outcasts, right? We are considered the people that are silenced and hated, and we're not the mainstream voices. So, Canadians, I think, are very open-minded and rational people, but as Richard Dawkins once said, sometimes you can be so open-minded that your brain falls out. And I think that describes my people.
Yeah, it's the classic pauper's paradox, right? So how long do you tolerate? I mean, the paradox of tolerance. Yeah. So yeah. I can vouch for it. I mean, someone who considers Canada and America to be his second home, especially, I'm very attached to that part of the world. I mean, I have families there. So yeah, that's something I've noticed in Canada, that this blind spot, and I love the term Gadsad's use. He calls it ostrich parasitic syndrome. It's literally
another Canadian.
Yeah, I mean, all these guys are Canadians. There's something happening there. All of them are Canadians, and it's just, I don't know. It's weird. So let's take a few questions now. People have asked a lot of questions. So I guess something like this is that, do you think religious fear? So this is Vipul. Vipul has asked you this question, that do you think religious fear, whether it comes to hell or the whole hijab thing, it really stops societies from innovating? What's been your experience?
Well, it certainly does when that religious fear is in the law enforcement. Oh my goodness, yes. So I mentioned that in 15 Muslim majority countries, they will execute you for leaving the religion. So if you say, if I want to denounce Islam, I don't believe in Islam anymore, that's, grounds for you to be not just imprisoned, but executed. In other countries, you would be arrested under blasphemy laws. Other countries, they may not imprison you or kill you, but they will take away your civil liberties. Like in Jordan, for example, then all of a sudden you're no longer considered a citizen. So that means you lose your citizenship. If you're married, that marriage is no longer, recognized by the state. Your children are no longer yours. You know what I mean? Like there's massive, the law enforcement, the government, that fear really keeps people in line. In Egypt, you could be thrown into an insane asylum if you say you don't believe in Allah anymore. So there's people are afraid of a lot of different things in a lot of different countries. So they don't have the freedom to say, they don't have the freedom to think. They're only told this is what you have to think. And if you think anything else, there will be consequences. So you don't even bother trying to open your mind and think in different directions, because the price for doing that is just too high. And so you stay in whatever circumstances you're in. And in fact, Yusuf Qaradawi, who is a part of the Muslim Brotherhood, said once, the reason why we have so many Muslims today is because of the apostasy laws. If we remove the laws that say we will execute people for leaving Islam, then we won't have so many Muslims. They know that they are keeping people in line with fear. Yeah. And they're actually using it as a useful tool to control people.
These kinds of things, when I listen to things like this, like I don't even have a comeback to this other than start laughing and banging my head on the wall. It's like, I don't have a comeback to this. It's an insult to my intelligence. It's like, how do I respond to this? I mean, it's just crazy. But to continue this, and this is actually a perfect follow-up question. So Sriram has asked you this question, that is there a chance for countries like Afghanistan to become a free society? What should the world do for rights of women over there? Because you have an organization and you're so involved in these things. So how do you think countries like Afghanistan, look, India, one thing I have to give up, I'm not saying India is perfect. I think India has a lot of problems across communities, but India does have a system where women can fight, women can come up, women can ask for some things. I'm not saying we're not at the level of the West is today, but I have a lot of hope for India. But when it comes to Pakistan, when it comes to Afghanistan,
that's a different story.
You're an activist. Yeah, you're an activist. So how would your organization deal with, say, a female in Afghanistan if she was to contact you guys or something of that sort?
Yeah, so the thing that it is important to remember is Afghanistan is full of bright women and men, but it used to be a country that was progressing, that secularism was, a goal. Like they used to have, women went to school, there were cinemas. It was not like the Taliban were not always in control there. People weren't always scared the way they are today. And those people still exist. I guess I'm going to make the parallel with Iran. The Iranian people, again, smart, incredibly bright, full of, these minds that are so rich and diverse with, art and poetry and music, et cetera, but they are being stifled by their Islamic regime. And so when you ask me if I think that a country like Afghanistan will be able to come out from this darkness, I think that it can. I think that there is a possibility because I believe in the people. I believe in the Afghani people, and I know that they are following these laws mostly out of fear. I mean, people, I had an Afghani student that was telling me about how he was kidnapped by the Taliban and he was in a room for 2 weeks by himself in complete darkness, to the point that today even he can't shut the door of his bedroom because he can't be in a room by himself with the door closed. If he's in a classroom or something with other people, he's okay. But in a room by himself, he can't shut the door. So, he's traumatized for the rest of his life because of something that happened for 2 weeks of his life. And so, of course, the people are going to get in line. Of course, people are going to be scared. We just talked about in Afghanistan, the students that were just murdered in their university, and it's not the first time that happened. And so the answer to that question is, I believe that people can flourish if they're given the opportunity. So the thing that is forcing them into submission is so it's so repressive right now that I can't see them being able to fight past it unless that thing is removed first. So again, like if we look at Iran, it's the Islamic regime. Iranian people are, most of them are secular. Most of them are they're incredibly bright people, but they have this dark cloud of the Islamic regime forcing them to, wear hijab and not ride bikes and pray 5 times a day and all of the rules of the Islamic regime. And that's true in many Muslim majority countries. The governments, there needs to be a separation of mosque and state, basically. And if you let Muslim people decide, do you want your freedom or do you want Sharia? Like most rational, normal human beings are going to choose freedom. Nobody wants, Sharia is not fun. It's a horrible, atrocious, difficult, vicious thing to live under. And people wouldn't be living under it if they were given the choice.
Yeah,
unless there are people that want to join ISIS, of course.
So smack bang. So I don't know if you're aware of this whole controversy recently with Rukmini Kalimaki, and she had this whole podcast, and she wrote a series of articles on ISIS, and I guess now she's canceled. They found some issues with her. Are you aware of this whole thing?
I didn't know she'd been canceled. I mean, I know her, but I wasn't aware of this controversy.
Yeah, so they found something wrong with her work, and you know how it is, right? You know, everybody's like, "You're canceled."
She's usually so careful. What did they find?
I don't know. I'm not aware of it, but somebody asked. I was like, maybe you're aware of it.
No, I hadn't heard about this. She's always very, very careful with, with how she words everything that she says. So, I'm surprised. But that's what happens, right? Like, people that used to be supporting this cancel culture, that were the cancelers, are now finding themselves being canceled, right? J.K. Rowling being one of the prime examples of that. Barry Weiss from the New York Times, like lots of people that were part of the cancel culture, part of that judgmental, pointing your finger down at the lesser thans for the way that they speak and that the way they're not using the right vocabulary in the right times, are finding that this snake is now, coming to eat them as well, because that's what it does. It eats itself, In America, you've got people on the far left, spray painting "fuck Biden," and they hate the Democratic Party. It's like Shia Sunnis, you're never gonna be Muslim enough. Somebody's always gonna kill you for not being Muslim enough. It's just constantly moving. It's a moving target. And
that's something about an entire culture based on purity and pollution, and and this is very interesting that you mentioned about the far left and this rise of, I don't have any other word to say. I don't know. Correct me if my analysis is wrong. I just think it's a new religion. It's very Abrahamic, by the way.
Totally agree. 100%. Yeah.
It's just, I always say this, that wokeism is Abrahamism just without the divinity. They removed the divinity, and then they were like, okay, we'll do the same thing again that we have been doing for so many years. We'll just replace it somewhere. But
and they're the fundamentalists.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and they can't take any deviation. And it's funny enough, it was Hillary Clinton who had once said, you cannot keep snakes in your own backyard and not expect them to bite you back. And well, that's something the left has to figure out. I mean, I'm very open about it. I am not in the left. I'm someone from the non-left. I don't use the word right wing because I'm all over the place ideologically. So I just like to be left alone. That's all I say. I tell people, just leave me alone and I'm happy.
Yeah, that's just definitely a classical liberal, live and let live. That's where you belong. But, my whole life, I thought I was on the left. My whole life, up until people on the left start praising China and, Chavez and North Korea. And then I was like, hold on a minute. What happened? Because I didn't move. But it seems like everybody started moving further to the left, where now, we're people are publicly saying I'm a communist. Like I heard people, I'm like, how are you saying that? To me, it's like saying I'm a Nazi. You know what I mean? Like you can't, how are you voicing this in public? How are you not ashamed? But, that's the left now. It has moved so far left that it is now socially acceptable to praise communism and to publicly admit that you believe in it.
All right. So a couple of questions now, because I want to talk to you about this whole ex-Muslim. I'll be very honest. I never was in. I found the whole terminology very weird, to be very honest. Again, it stems from my experience as a Hindu, because I still call myself a Hindu. I might be a disbeliever, but I'm a Hindu, and I found this whole ex-Muslim. I mean, why would you want to associate it with something that you were? Okay, I mean, I would always tell them, okay, get over it, kind of a thing. You were. I mean, I don't say I'm an ex non-vegetarian. Where I'm coming from. But then my friends would say, you don't go through the trauma that we went through. And they would come back to me and say, right, uh, that's where our whole worldview comes from. Islam is different. So tell me where I'm going wrong. Like, I can never relate to the ex-Muslim tag at an intellectual level.
Well, I think that the reason why you can't relate to it is, like your friend said to you, is it's not your experience. So, as a person from a Hindu background, I think it's more like being Jewish, in that exactly the story you told me of when you told your mother that you don't believe in the gods anymore. She said, okay, anyway, eat your breakfast. That's exactly the same story one of my friends told me about when she told her mom, she's Jewish, when she told her mom that she didn't believe, her mom said, so who believes? Like, who cares? It doesn't matter. Just, go get ready for school. It doesn't matter, because you're still accepted as a part, and you're still accepted in the community. She's still accepted as a Jewish person. You're still accepted as a Hindu person. With Muslims, it's not the same. I can't tell my family I don't believe in Allah, and they'll say, it doesn't matter. No, it matters, right? You will be, if you're lucky, you'll only be disowned for it, but it could get a lot worse. You're considered a traitor. You're considered, a non-believer is like almost, it's like subhuman, So in Islam, like one way of just illustrating for you the subhumanness of a non-believer is, in Islam, if you can take non-Muslim women as sex slaves, but you can never take a Muslim woman as a sex slave. Same with men. You can take non-Muslim men as your slaves. A Muslim man can never be a slave. So they're given like a supremacy over other people. So when you say, I don't want to be a Muslim anymore, you are not choosing to leave the community or to no longer be part of your family. That choice is being made for you. You don't have the option of being both. And so I guess it's a lot like if you were a heroin addict or if you were an alcoholic, you have a shared trauma with other people that used to be heroin addicts or that used to be alcoholics. And so now that you have been outcast, because that's what happens, we're excommunicated and we're by ourselves floating with no family, no friends, no community, no support. And in fact, we're hated and hunted by the people that used to give us that love and support, people that used to be our community and our tribe. So when you're out there all alone, because we're humans and we're social animals, you want a support system. And so when we call ourselves ex-Muslims, we're reaching out to each other that are out in the barren desert by ourselves without any support. And we're saying, here, I understand. I'm here too. I've also been through that. I've also been, discarded by my family and by people that I love and the people that I thought loved me, not knowing that it was very conditional on me continuing to love Allah and his prophet. And so that's why it's really important. We are alone. And so we're trying to find a support system. And by using the word ex-Muslim, it's kind of like a beacon saying, here we are. And, we're not a cohesive, supportive, loving community because we are all dissidents. We're all free thinkers. We're all independent thinkers. So the reason why we left Islam was because we had that inner fight in each one of us is so fiercely independent that we were willing or that we accepted losing our community and our family and our friends. And in some cases, your jobs, and you have to move countries and yada, 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 fearing your life. It's a huge thing to make that decision. So we're all very fiercely independent people. And so you can just imagine a bunch of fiercely independent people do not create a nice new little tribe. So there's, it's called the ex-Muslim community just because it's a way of describing all of these people that have this shared trauma that they can relate to. But we ourselves are not a cohesive group in any way. There's nothing that we all believe in or that we all agree on. It's just that we all have a shared trauma. So again, it's like a bunch of heroin addicts. If you have a bunch of heroin addicts, they're clean. And if they all get together in a room, you're probably not going to be able to find one thing that they all have in common other than the fact that they have all overcome this trauma. So it's a shared misery, basically, that comes.
Yes, it's like the Alcohol Anonymous for disbelievers amongst Muslims.
Well, it's a way of us finding each other. So there are certain groups, because I'm not anonymous, obviously. A lot of ex-Muslims are not anonymous. But it's like you can be an ex-alcoholic and not necessarily be a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. But you would still say, I used to be an alcoholic. So what I mean to say is, when you say I used to be a Muslim, it is useful in explaining your position so that other people who have gone through the same experience, so that you can identify each other. That's it. It doesn't mean that you're going to have anything in common. It just means that you had something in common.
Yes. So another question that Pritesh has asked you is that he starts by, I apologize if this comes across as a personal question, but do you sometimes regret choosing this life of an ex-Muslim activist because of the scrutiny that you get and the almost negative response that you get from the media many times?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Quite often I feel like y'all can fucking burn. I don't care. I'm over it. I'm tired. You know, I try so hard to tell you and you don't want to listen. So whatever, you know, there's this like a saying that we have in Arabic, like, you know, kind of like eat. If you want to eat this, eat it until you're full, you know, and you want this, have it. I'm done. So yes, I reach that point all the time. And if I hadn't started my organization, and if I hadn't written my book, and if I didn't have so many people sort of reaching out to me because they can't trust anybody else and they're too scared to talk to anybody else. So if I didn't already put myself in that position, I would have walked away so many times. But now I feel like I have this responsibility where it's too late. I can't walk away. And more than anything, that's probably the biggest thing that keeps me going is getting messages from people in Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, you know, everywhere, where they say, you know, I'm married and I have 3 children and I can't tell my spouse about how I'm feeling. I can't tell my friend. I can't tell my doctor. I can't tell my mother. I can't tell anybody, but I know I can trust you. And so, you know, that goes back to your question of why do you identify as an ex-Muslim? Well, it's exactly for that. Is I'm like this light saying, I'm over here. If you need someone to talk to who understands what you're going through, then, you know, you can contact me. And yeah.
Yeah, I get it. So one last question, and I want to connect it to a question somebody's asked in the live chat too. So, and I asked this question to everybody who's left Islam, and I always state my position first, so that it's only fair that I state my personal position first. Like I personally, at a fundamental, logical, intellectual level, support Islamic reform. I always say this, that the way religions get reformed, I'm leaving Hinduism aside because it's structured differently when it comes to Abrahamic religions. I'm just using Abrahamic religions as the fundamental bending block here, that the Bible did not change. The interpretation of the Bible changed. Now somebody might come back and say, how do you change Surah Nisa 4:36 or 34, whatever, the wife beating verse? I'm like, well, they'll find a way out. I don't know, or they'll just avoid it, whatever. But I see a lot of resistance when I talk to Muslim disbelievers that, oh, Islamic reform is a sham, Islamic reform is this, Islamic reform is that. And then I do see some ex-Muslims actually, or maybe Majid Nawaz, who considers himself to be a Muslim, actively working towards Islamic reform. And there's a comment made by someone. They say that sometimes they feel like, for normalizing, you know, a lot of things, and sometimes they I don't know, I've not observed this, but that's their observation. They say there is unconditional sexualization of women. I don't know, I've not noticed this in the ex-Muslim community, but somebody has asked this question, that there tends to be this unconditional sexualization of women. But first of all, on the Islamic reform thing, do you at a fundamental level think Islam can be reformed or should be reformed?
I don't think that the religion of Islam can be reformed. I think that Muslim people can choose to reform themselves, as in they will cherry pick their religion and choose to follow certain aspects and ignore 90% of it. So as opposed to Christianity, where they had the Old Testament and then they actually had the New Testament, they got a new edition that said, okay, ignore the other stuff here. This is the new book. Muslims will never get that because they're not an organized, there's no Pope, there's no, there's no Vatican, you know what I mean? Like it's not structured in the same way. So nobody will ever, this new edition of the Quran, like it's not going to happen. But individual Muslims, and I think given the choice, like I said earlier with separation of mosque and state, give Muslims the choice, give Muslim women the choice, like, do you want to wear niqab or do you want to wear whatever you want to wear? Of course they're going to want to wear whatever they want to wear. Like, people aren't going to follow the edicts of Sharia unless they're forced to. You know, you have to think of, how many gay people are living in these Muslim majority countries that are being told that they are immoral and that they should be killed for being gay. Give them the option. Do you want to follow Sharia? Do you want to think of yourself as immoral that should be killed? Or do you want to, love yourself and appreciate and value yourself for who you are? Of course, they're going to choose the latter. So I think that Muslim human beings are no different, whether they're Muslim, Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, whatever. We all want very similar things. And personal autonomy, personal freedom, I think is a basic thing that most humans want. And I think that Muslims will choose that for themselves if they are able to. So Muslim reform, you mentioned Majid Nawaz. Well, he's in the United Kingdom, so he's very lucky in that he can have that option. But if you're living in Saudi Arabia or you're living in, Pakistan or whatever, you don't have that option.
Yeah, I agree with you. But then, how do people work out? Like, I'll give you a story. So I remember being contacted a while ago by a blogger from Bangladesh. So he was like, I've run away and I've come to Kolkata, India. And I don't want to go back, but I'm on a tourist visa. Can you help me? I tried my best. I ran pillar to post, but just couldn't help him. And he's gone back, and he's fine as of now. But it does bother me, and believe me, I till this day I can't forgive myself that I could not successfully help that guy out or make sure he lived in India. But anyways, I don't think so he would have been safe in India. I mean, look at Taslima Nasreen. She can't go to Kolkata. She's a Bengali atheist from a Muslim background. Even in India, it's like the Indian government has told Taslima that, okay, you can stay around Delhi. We can guarantee your security in Delhi, in the surrounding area. But she's a native Bengali speaker. She can't stay in the Indian state of Bengal because the Bengali politics says we need that 27% Muslim population to vote for us. So we will not protect one Taslima Nasreen. In such a scenario, well, in India, I always say this, people don't like it when I say this. I always say demography is destiny. And when I say demography is destiny, I don't mean it in a religious way. I mean it in the sense of ideas. Your destiny is decided by the kind of ideas that are held by X number of people. So if the majority holds liberal values, the society is going to be liberal. If the majority goes into this ultra-religious or ultra-neo-wokist ideology, society is going to collapse. Such a scenario, now you could be in Canada, I could be in Mumbai, India. How do we make sure that the demography of people holding good ideas is always there?
Well, the thing is the biggest problem is that in 50 Muslim majority countries, it's in the government, it's in the law enforcement. So as long as, if you're talking about in a country like the UK or Canada or even India to a certain extent, like you're allowed your freedoms, you're allowed to think outside the box. There isn't going to be, you're not going to be risking your life to do that. Obviously, someone like Taslima Nasreen is, but you know what I mean? In a general sense, there's that option for you. So in a country where that isn't an option for you, then it's not going to happen. If all of the education and media and, everything is giving you one perspective, then it's going to be very, very hard to have liberal-minded free thinkers come out of that society.
Yeah. One last question before I let you go. How do we deal with, and it bothers me on a daily basis, I don't know how to put it. I have Muslims in my own family. I actually have Muslims in my family, and they did not convert or anything, which is very interesting because if a Hindu marries into a Muslim family, the equation changes. But if a Muslim marries into a Hindu family, especially a girl, Hindus don't care. You can be Muslim, right? But I don't know. There's something in the Muslim psyche that if you come into my zone, you are going to convert. It's very
Exactly.
annoying. But at the same time, I don't want to be part of the discourse that normalizes bigotry against the average Muslim. I try to be ultra cautious about it. I don't know. I don't have to be ultra cautious about it when it comes to Hindus or Christians or anybody else. But it's like this thing ingrained in my brain by default that every time I discuss Islam with anybody, I'll have to make sure that I kind of present the question of, but I'm not anti-Muslim, guys. I genuinely believe that we should not be anti-Muslim. But I do feel somewhere down the line, and let me be very honest, even in the Hindu discourse in India, there is a lot of anti-Muslim bigotry, which I hate, and I oppose. And that's why I'm called a monkey balancer. I don't know what the hell that is, but they call me that. That, oh, you try to please the Western liberals. I was like, I'm not trying to please anyone. I'm just trying to please my moral center, that I just feel it's wrong. But how do we deal with this? There is genuine anti-Muslim bigotry too. How do we deal with that?
There is always going to be genuine bigotry. There's going to be anti-Black bigotry. There's going to be anti-women misogyny. There's going to be, anti-Semitic bigotry. That kind of hate from one group to another group is part of the human experience, unfortunately. So the way we fight it is the way we fight anything else, is just with, you fight bad ideas with better ideas. And, that is definitely, a concern, but it is not going to stop me from speaking out against the enormous amount of oppression that occurs in the name of Islam. I mean, I'm not just talking about terrorism, which always makes the headlines. I'm talking about young girls being forced into marriages, basically being forced into rape. I'm talking about young girls getting their clitoris cut off with a razor. I'm talking about, gay Muslim kids being told that they are subhuman and that they should be killed. The negativity that Islam causes people on a daily basis is something that we need to speak up against. And I won't be silenced because there are some bigots out there. Of course there are bigots out there. There will always be bigots out there. But that's not going to stop me from speaking up for people who, if I were silenced by these bigots, then they're just going to continue to be victimized.
Yeah, I guess that's the best answer. I mean, that's what I say all the time. I was like, look, what do you want me to do? Like, I don't support anti-Muslim bigotry. What do you want me to do? Like, put a poster on my forehead or something every day and just go around with a placard saying, I don't hate Muslims? I mean, it's never going to be enough. And yeah, I kind of get you. If you start playing by that game, then why only with Muslims? Why don't I have to give this description that I don't hate Hindus all the time? Because I kind of go after Hinduism on my podcast all the time, but I never have to give this disclaimer, by the way, when it comes to Hinduism or Hindus. But yeah, I guess it's just, and this is the beauty, don't you think, Yasmine, that, Muslims and Islamism in a way has captured both the podiums. They're the victim while they are the bully.
Yes. I mean, when I was growing up, I used to call my mom the persecuted princess because I said somehow she makes herself the victim, but also superior in the same breath. And I was like, how do you do that? You always do that. You always make yourself the superior victim. And, as I got older and I started to notice that this was actually a very common Muslim, perspective. That's how a lot of them see themselves, as superior, but also a victim. And then I saw that Christopher Hitchens wrote about this. He has an article in Vice magazine where he talked about Muslims have this, this trilogy, I guess, of what is it? What did he say again now? Self grandeur, but then also self victimhood, and then he added self-hate in there as well, which is also true, or a trifecta, not a trilogy. So yes, it's a very, very, very common thing that is used all the time, and the victimhood is used as a tool to silence criticism of their religion. It's a very successful tool, in fact. So when you try to criticize Islam, they'll say, "Oh, you're being Islamophobic." So then you'll bite your tongue and you won't criticize it. In fact, even criticizing, Samuel Paty, who was the teacher who was beheaded by that 18-year-old refugee, even speaking out against that was considered Islamophobia. So, it is just a weaponization of victimhood to, it's a continuation of bullying, really. It's just they're using that weapon to meet continue their goal.
Yeah. They're obviously, at the end of the day, there are no good answers. So Yasmine, I'm conscious of your time. So before I let you go, so can you tell us about something new coming up? Or is there any new book on the line, or what's the best way for people? Let's say there are, people who are closeted ex-Muslims who are going to be watching this podcast right now, or maybe later. What is the best way to get in touch with you? So what would be that? Can you tell us that?
Yeah, so about my book, it's going to be translated by the Richard Dawkins Foundation into Urdu, Indonesian, Arabic, and Persian, and it will be available for free on their website next year. Yeah, so that's really huge. So a lot of closeted ex-Muslims who don't speak English, who speak any of those 4 languages, will be able to read my book for free. So that's really great news. And for anybody that's listening right now, if you want to get a hold of me, you can go to my website, yasminemohammed.com. They can contact me there. And I'm also on Twitter, but I've got a lot of followers there, so I quite often don't see my messages. So the best way to contact me is through my website. And I'm also on Facebook. Again, I never check my Facebook messages. And I'm also on Instagram. So even though I'm on social media, quite often people send me messages in social media. I just ignore those because most of them are things that I don't want to see. So if you want to contact me, then please do so through my website.
All right, perfect, guys. So I have left the address for Yasmine's website in the description of the podcast. It doesn't matter if you're going to watch this on YouTube or later on the audio, wherever, SoundCloud, iTunes, wherever. You're going to go to the description. Yasmine's website is going to be there. I've also left her Twitter handle in case you guys want to do that. I insist, buy her book. Anyways, Garuda Publications is going to come out with the book very soon. So Garuda, you guys know Garuda, Sankrant's running Garuda. So buy the book, read it. It's a wonderful book. I've personally read it. In fact, I had read it a long time ago and I never got to inviting Yasmine. I finally got it done. So Yasmine, I wish you all the wealth and happiness in life. And, I sincerely hope that, you keep on this movement that all of you guys have started in your own ways. I know all of you have disagreements even within the ex-Muslim community, but I wish nothing but happiness and success. And once again, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys, you know the drill. Subscribe, like, share the video, comment on it. If you like what I'm doing, become a member on the YouTube channel, or you can go and support me on Patreon. I try my best to bring a plethora of guests to you, from ex-Muslims to scientists to, whatever I want to talk about. So I'll see you guys next time with another interesting guest. Until then, namaste, take care, goodbye, see you next time.